Joshua Atkinson began his, I'll read it anyway. It says this. Began his fellowship journey in 1977. He worked as staff, was an inner light consciousness guide, and led the Carmel experience, a week-long program of personal transformation for the fellowship. No, yeah, right, that sentence. He is an ordained fellowship minister, and for the past 35 years, he's worked as a counselor. Joshua and his wife, Analia, live in Kauai. Is that Kauai, Hawaii, huh? Are an average students of the Course in Miracles. Please help me welcoming Joshua Atkinson.
So actually on the schedule, the first thing that it says is icebreakers. And and I was going to concoct some silliness for that, but we all know each other and there's no ice in here. So probably going to skip past most of that. But I would like to make one observation and ask you to think about this for a minute. When I was thinking about icebreakers, what I got a picture of was like a bowl of stew. That's what we are. And we each are an ingredient in that stew. And it can be a vegetarian stew or a beef stew or any other kind of stew you want it to be. But there's a sense of combination. And I'm going to wait just a minute. Something went kaboom. Oh, it's Jerry's whiskey bottle. So what I was thinking about was if we are a stew, if we are a conglomeration of goodies, what element in that stew would you be? Would you be a vegetable? Would you be a spice? Would you be some kind of meat? Think about that just for a minute and just tell yourself what element in that stew would you consider yourself to be? If a vegetable, what kind of vegetable? If a spice, what kind of spice? Say it again. Broccoli. Go ahead. Just homegrown tomatoes. Slap him, Judith, real quick. Cayenne. I knew there was going to be a cayenne pepper in here, maybe two. Green beans. Garlic. Yeah. Broccoli? Oh, the broth. Uh-huh. Cinnamon. All right. Fish. The broth? Sauce. Garlic. We get 2 garlics. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so that's a little bit of a mundane example, but think about if we mix all that together, what we are. Delicious. Aren't we delicious? And there's even a little steam that comes up from that. Anybody think about it being the steam? Well, maybe we need to warm up a little bit, and then we'll see that. So the second part of this little icebreaker thing, I'm going to start it now, and we'll come back to it at the end of this talk. And that second part is that being in a fellowship of inner light, there's also a mixture here. We're an interfaith. And that mixture is just as wonderful as that broth and tasty. And what I'd like for you to think about for a moment is, what do you bring to that fellowship? And the avenue I'd like for you to consider as you think about that is, who or what has inspired you in your life? Could be a person, could be a situation, could be a book, could be a song, could be a painting. But the first thing that comes to your mind probably that has served as an inspiration for you. If you could just think about that for a minute and hold that, because we'll come back to it at the end of the talk. Do you need a minute with that? Take a minute with that then. But trust the first thing you thought of. Okay, everybody got something? Everybody got something? Hang on to it. We're going to come back to it as part of the wrap. When Jerry tells me 5 minutes, we're going to do that. So here we go. The topic is self-talk, and that came from some directions that I received from Jack and his planning and whoever else planned with you this event. And the idea being that we wanted to find some practicality in our spirituality, some means to find some enjoyment in life by the use of the tools. And though self-talk is not one of the ILC tools, it's not in that repertoire, unless it was added. It was added. Yeah, the whole workshop on self-talk, yes. Which is a wonder, if you want to bypass or add to whatever you hear today, on YouTube, there is the self-talk. It's probably an hour and a half, 2 hours long lecture that Paul gave many, many years ago, and it's actually very, very wonderful. But my take, this is going to be, I didn't really actually borrow anything from Paul on this. I thought I might, but I've been doing this self-talk lecture, presentation, and exercise with groups for a number of years. Now, the groups that I've been working with, as most of you know, have been, well, when they walk in the door, I ask them, why are you here? And the answer is, the judge sent me. Or the probation officer sent me. Or my wife sent me. So there's that coming in the door. And my response to that is that I can accept that that's what kicked your butt to get into the door, but let me tell you why I think you're here. And this can apply to all of us here and now, even though most of you weren't ordered here by the judge. I say to them, you're probably here because you don't think you're very lovable. Because lovable people don't do what you did. Loving people don't do what you did. And some of those stories I won't even bring out because they can get pretty graphic and they can be pretty rough. And they look at me when I say that to them, and they don't believe me, of course. And some of them will challenge that. And I will just respond to them, I can prove it to you. I can prove to you that you're lovable. Just hang with me. So what entails after that, which is condensed now down into a half an hour for you guys, is about 25 hours of work that we do in group. And it's centered around, as many of you that are working in therapy know, centered around the idea of CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. There'll be a handout on that. And the application here, though, is a little bit different. In those cases, with those men that I worked with, the immediate goal is to help stop the violence in the home. That's the immediate goal, and that's what I focus on. What we focus on in the Fellowship of the Inner Light is finding truth, finding happiness, finding joy. And so it's a little different intention, I suspect. And if that fits with you, use that. If you have some other intention, please set it in your mind now. And not just for this little talk, but maybe for this whole weekend. Let's get our money's worth out of this and really expect. So what this whole business is about then is Orange Terrace work. On the Orange Terrace, as you well know, or hopefully know, it's about letting go and forgiving in a truer sense, in the truest sense, so that we can become new. What has been my experience, and one of the reasons I jumped on this self-talk is that early on in my days at the fellowship, I had some horrendous self-talk going on. And most of that self-talk revolved around, I'm defective. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. Now that was not necessarily the song that I sang, but it was the drum beat in the back of my head. Something's wrong here. Well, when I walked into the first ILC class I took, there was a fellow named Paul Solomon who had this psychic ability. It's amazing. And he looked right at me and he said, Joshua, you don't think you're very lovable, do you? And I said, oh my God, how'd he know that? I barely know that. I couldn't put words to it. But I knew there was something wrong. So I started paying attention to him, and I noticed about this fellow and the people that he was with, particularly my now wife, who was then part of the group that came, that there was something kind of ebullient and joyous and with it and happy. And I thought, man, I want some of that. But I didn't know how to get it. I just didn't know how to get it. But somehow what I was seeing and hearing and feeling was ringing true, okay? And with the invitation to come to Virginia Beach from Tara Singh, who also was a part of that initial group with me, what I came to find was if I paid attention to those that I admired, Paul being one of them, and listened very closely, and at least tried what he suggested, there could be payoffs. So what he suggested to me is basically self-talk. He didn't call it that then. I don't know if he called it anything back then. This was 77. What he suggested to me was every morning, first thing, and every night, last thing, for 30 days, stand in front of a mirror and listen to what you're telling yourself. So, sounds relatively easy. I almost brought a bunch of mirrors to hand out, but you guys are with me on this. So, of course, I look in the mirror the first day and, good God, what's wrong with you, man? You know, and the list goes on. And so those negative self-talks, of which we're all familiar with, were very obvious in my thinking. And at about day 10 or so, and this is what I continually strive for and hope for all of us, is that we just get tired of that. Because it's always ending up in a dead end. Negative self-talk never results in happiness. And if that's my intention, then look how I'm sabotaging myself. So where does that negative self-talk come from? Parents, teachers, preachers? I don't know. It comes from somewhere. Maybe we bring it in with us when we come into this experience. We have some sense of nagging not rightness. Maybe it's a sense of feeling separate from God as we identify with this plane. Where's God? Could be a lot of different things, but that negative self-talk that's associated with all that is never productive. So after a few days of doing that religiously, I was a good student. I followed his second direction, and his second direction was turn those around into a positive. So for a few days, I looked in the mirror and I said, oh, Joshua, you're such a loving soul. And in the back of my mind, I'm going, bullshit. Because I still didn't believe it, but I was going to say it. I was just going to keep saying it. And went through with all the affirmations and the platitudes that associate with it. Even at one point, decided to act out some of those platitudes until I landed at a dry cleaner's on Virginia Beach Boulevard with a big old Jesus smile on my face. And the lady that worked there said, where do you get that Jesus smile? And I realized, that's just putting on. That's just putting on. But it was the best I could do at the moment, and that was fine. It caught me up a little short and made me stop and think, though. So after a few days of that positive affirmation business, I started turning those affirmations into a question. And it became more like, instead of, oh, I'm a loving child of God, it was, am I a loving child of God? And that created a space that just by turning it into a question, and by creating that space, am I a loving child of God, I was ready to receive an answer. The other stuff didn't leave room for an answer. I'd already decided I'm a loving child of God by God. No. Am I a loving child of God, really? So after a period of time, towards the end of that 30 days, when I went back to the mirror and I was going to resume the litany of affirmations and such, I looked in the mirror and I was actually kind of tired of that too. I was tired of the negative and tired of the affirmation. I was just kind of tired of all of it. And I looked in the mirror, and without any words or any thought, guess what I saw? What do you think I saw? A loving child of God. I'll be darned. What a surprise. What a great surprise. And I didn't have to do anything. So what I was actually able to witness there, which I think we've all witnessed in some degree, to some extent, in some form, is that is who we are. And we lose sight of that, though, with this incessant kind of production of ideas and thoughts and words that are always going through our head, sometimes leading us down negative ways, sometimes into puffed up ways, and in all kinds of directions. So one of the things I wanted to mention is that, depending on how you Google it, there are a number of studies that show that in every single minute we have at least 49 thoughts present. Those thoughts are, like right now, the seat's hard. I might miss my second cup of coffee, or what's for lunch, or, but all these thoughts are always kind of drifting in our consciousness. And then what I used to teach in the classes, the groups that I taught, I said, this is where we make choices about our thinking. We have that power to make a choice. Do I want to hop on that thought that's pissed off at so-and-so about this and that? If I want to hop on that thought and ride that train, go for it. But you know where it's going to head. You know where it's going to end up. We do that. We do that today. Somebody gets on our bumper in traffic and starts honking the horn. That son of a bitch. There we go. We can learn, because these are all learned things. We can unlearn some of these things. And the way that we unlearn them is we create some space between our automatic reaction based on how we were taught or how we were brainwashed, step back from our opinion, and consider, is there another possibility here that that guy is on my bumper honking his horn? What would be another possibility? Taillights out, late for work, wife's having a baby in the back seat. It could be he's having a bad day. It could be a whole variety of things. So if I can learn to back off and consider that, then in my consideration, I may learn how to handle it differently so that I don't join that band of negativity and go down the road to that dead end that we all know about, the unhappiness that lays there. So what I want to do with my thinking is I want to flip it to a place where it's moving in a direction that invites happiness. See, this is the hard part, I think. I don't really know how to love myself, because that self that is trying to love and be loved is not my real self. It's who I think I am. So it's not even a question of who am I anymore. It's what am I? What am I? Am I my conglomeration of thoughts? Am I this body? Or maybe there's more to me than meets the eye. Maybe there's more to each of us than meets our eye. Maybe we are indeed, in fact, the holy children of God. And with that recognition, what's left but to be happy? To me, that's sort of like the heaven on earth thing. And that's where I want to live. Now, I can choose hell every day, and probably do in many ways, but that is a choice. I always have that choice in my thinking. So this ability to back up, examine a situation, see it differently, is called witnessing. That's when we can separate ourselves from our thinking and just observe our thoughts. I used to do an exercise with the guys. I say, you know, all these thoughts are just habits, habitual ways of thinking. You know, you step on my toe, I go, ouch, and I say, what's wrong with you? Why'd you step on my toe? That's a habit. You offend me with a word, there's a habit of reaction to that because I'm feeling threatened. Well, what in me is feeling threatened? This image of myself is the only thing that's feeling threatened. The real me is not threatened. But this image of myself is threatened, this thing that I've created that I call me. So if I can learn to witness that when it's happening, then I don't have to get caught up in that story, whatever that story's about. The story may have nothing to do with me. Absolutely nothing. I just happen to be a target walking by for this person. It may have absolutely nothing to do with me. So I want to learn how to become a witness. And one of the ways, Frederick Leonel was a guy that came through the fellowship once upon a time. And he gave us a little simple exercise. He says, imagine yourself standing behind the chair that you're sitting in and just observe yourself talking and watching and listening and how you're moving. Just do that. And you're learning to become a witness of yourself. That's all you have to do. Don't even judge it. Just witness it. It's not good or bad. It's just what it is. Just witness it. And then you can ask yourself your question, how's that working for you? And if it's working for you, great. If it's not, it's time to make an adjustment. This whole idea of replacing our negative thoughts, I think I already covered that. Most of those thoughts are limiting. Richard Bach, a familiar character around here with some of his work, and one of his statements in his handbook for Messiahs is, ask for your limitations, and they're yours. So we can examine how we limit ourselves. I can't tell you guys how deathly afraid I was to get up and speak in front of people. I mean, I'd rather you use a hammer on my fingernails. But that's pretty graphic. And I thought, well, what is that? And what that was simply a means to limit myself from being who I was, warts and all. Didn't really matter. But I was afraid, and that's what's behind every limiting thought, is some kind of a fear. Some kind of a fear. You guys that have done firewalks know that. How many of y'all have done a firewalk? Yeah. So you remember how in that process when they set you up to walk out on those 1,100-degree coals, they talked about, fear is probably not something you want to be entertaining while your feet are on those coals. And they took us through a process. And that process brought us to a different kind of thought. And that different kind of thought was one of success, one of completion. And sure enough, that made the firewalk, for me anyway, made the firewalk possible. Now, so these self-limiting, self-sabotaging, actually is another way of putting it, deprive each of us there's a beauty and a gift that we each have to share. And when we limit ourselves in the sharing of that, who are we depriving besides ourselves? We're depriving others. The loveliness of Sarah's meditation. You guys that were here this morning. You could, her lilt is wonderful, the words are great. That's the form. But the content of Sarah's meditations is full of love. And that's what carries through. And we all have that in some way, shape, or form. Chris's music, Jack's jokes. We got all kinds of ways and forms to express this love. even right in this moment, if we just stop and be still just for a second, you can probably sense it in this room even. That's the guiding force. The words are great, the form is wonderful, but it's actually irrelevant to that awareness. Okay, I talked about that and that and that. The importance of silence, yes. So after these 49 thoughts a minute are running through, and we've gotten to a place where we can become just a witness to those thoughts rather than jumping on a thought and riding it, seeing where it takes us again. If we can get to a place where those thoughts can still be running, but we're not attaching ourselves to those thoughts, they're like an undercurrent of sorts, but we're in the sky now. We've moved to the sky. And from there, there's an awareness that's not locked into that limiting thought that was running through amongst those 49 a minute. And in that overview is where we can experience something that I like to call vision. Vision is recognition, as Rabbi Gelberman greatly put it, looking beyond the horizon. Looking beyond the horizon, he said that very pointedly. And with vision comes awareness. And what is reflected in awareness is truth, if that's what we want. And if we're not interested in truth, we're not going to see it. But if that's our intention, is to see the truth, and I suspect that's a lot of the reason why we all came to the fellowship. We're truth seekers. So if that's really what I want to see, then let me get there. Okay. So I just got to 5. Really? I thought I had till 10:40.
Next step is acceptance.
Oh, gosh, I'm looking at that clock slow. Shoot. Oh, no, it's not. It's perfect. I'm looking at it wrong. Daggone it. Okay. No, I'm done with that. I have a handout because this was also to be experiential. Yeah. So what I'll do is this. Let me have just that top sheet on cognitive. We're going to do this as a group. Normally, do this as pairs. No, you don't even have to pass it out. I'm just going to read it. Just give me one, I'll read it, and we'll zoom. Zoom. Okay, so one of the things that's worth considering, this is a basic tenet in what's called cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, is that our thinking is screwed up. Kind of hard to admit, but our thinking is screwed up sometimes. Folks in this room have been plowing the earth on the Orange Terrace for a long time, so maybe your thinking's not as screwed up as mine can get. But it's worth taking a look. So in this intro to self-talk, there's a very important component, and that's taking a look at what's called cognitive distortions. In plainer language, what that means is beliefs that we hold on to that are entrenched even if they don't serve us, even if they don't serve us, okay? For example, and I'll read through these, and I want you to, as I read through them, I want you to listen and see which one of these you are most familiar with. But I'll just give you a quick example of how this can go. When my wife, Annalea, is busy and late coming home, I become upset and start catastrophizing. I am thinking, she's in a ditch. She's had a wreck. No, I don't even stop there. What am I going to do without her? Oh my God, I better start writing the obituary. That's how nuts it can get. And I honest to God, I've been there. Now, my wife and I don't know, we've had I don't know if we've ever had a conversation about this, but somehow she provides a remedy. Now, when she's running late, she calls me. Or she lets me know when she's leaving, wherever she's leaving from. And I go, whew, no obituaries today.
You also put a finder on my keychain.
Oh, right, and I put a tracker. Right. I put a tracker on her. I forgot about that. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I never have to do that again. Okay. So these cognitive distortions are, as I said, these are like entrenched beliefs that actually, on examination, are irrational, make no sense, yet there they are, and yet there they keep cropping up. Damn. Here it comes again. The trick is, as I become a witness to this, I know where it's leading, I can much, much more quickly let that go, let that crazy thought go, and not follow that thought down to the end of the line where it's nothing but a train wreck. So there's a number of these. I just wrote down, and there's a handout you guys can take with you on this. These are just some of the most common ones. Okay. Wrong side. Catastrophizing, I just gave an example of that. Blaming. When I'm upset, there's an instinct to blame. Right. Holding others responsible for my feelings. Pretty common. Slap me upside the head, I'm going to say, yo, what's wrong? Right? No, I'm not going to own that my experience is my experience. You just happen to be the catalyst for that. Emotional reasoning. If I feel it, it must be true. I have a great example with that one, using my own jealousy. You know, I'm jealous, so it must be true. She's this, she's doing that, right? It's crazy, crazy thinking. Labeling. Labeling, that's a big one. It's when we take a situation, a specific, and then we generalize it. All Americans are this. All Russians are that. Jumping to conclusions. That's a big one. We assume we know what the other person is feeling and thinking, but there's no real evidence of that. So we jump to a conclusion because perhaps we've seen it before, perhaps it reminds us of our mother, perhaps this or that or the other. But instead of exploring what's going on, we just jump right to our decision, our conclusion. I got two more and I'm done. Being right. That's another big one. A lot of that comes, a lot of wanting and needing to be right comes from the unacceptability of being wrong. In some situations, being wrong is cause for all kinds of criticism and ignoring and defectiveness. Last one, all or nothing thinking. No gray areas. It's either good or bad, period. And I'm the judge, jury, and executioner on this. Okay? So 20 hours into 30 minutes, you got the best I could give you. So the handout that you're getting, I just briefly went through the front side of it and gave you one example of that top one, catastrophizing. I'm not going to take the time now because who knows, he might walk in the door any minute. But I could give you examples of each of these. And I'll also mention that if you do want to study a little bit about this thing called cognitive distortion, it's very easy to Google that and find it. I just tried to pick the most common ones. But as you look through those, what I'd like for you to do is to pick one that you are familiar with using in your own experience, or one that keeps cropping up that perhaps you've been aware of, but one that keeps kind of cropping up every now and then and seems to be a rock in the puddle for you. And once you get that, you don't have to speak it out loud. I just want you to hang on to it, and I want you to think about perhaps the last time that occurred. And after you've done that, I would like for you to partner up. If you don't want to, looks like we're numbered pretty well. You don't have to get up and move around, just whoever you're next to. Or if you want to get up and move around, do it. And once you get identified the one that you're most familiar with, that you've seen a pattern for yourself in utilizing that one, flip to the other side of the paper. And then with your partner, you're going to take turns. You decide, everybody got a partner? Figure out who your partner is. Okay? Everybody got one? So with your partner, taking turns, one will go through this entire list. I'll kind of guide you through it as we do this. You'll speak one at a time. You'll take turns, okay? So decide who's going to go first. And then think about that cognitive distortion that you just identified. Tell them what it is. Tell them which cognitive distortion you recognize as part of your experience. No shame. No shame, guys. This is just how we get screwed up in our thinking sometimes. Okay, once you've identified that, okay, everybody's got that. Now, think about the last time that happened. All right. Brian, can I have 5 minutes of your time?
Go for it.
Okay, very kind. 5 minutes means we're speed reading, speed talking, and probably only have time for one of the partners, not both, okay? All right. So you decide who's going to speak. You've already done that. The other person is simply there to listen. No commentary necessary, just simply to listen. Okay, take a look at that distortion, whatever that distortion was, and what is a thought that is associated with that? In other words, you're looking at the person, you're looking at yourself, you're looking at a situation, whatever it was that brought that distortion to the surface for you.
My wife just left me.
That's a good one. That's a thought. My wife just left me. All right. Now, once you have put some words around that, everybody got words around it? You're all good with that? You got some words around it, because we really need to identify. And it's not a feedback deal. You don't have to give each other suggestions on this. It's whatever you come up with is what's right. Okay, once you've identified that, take a look at that person, take a look at yourself or that situation, whichever you're working with right now, and see if you can back up just for a minute to witness that, those thoughts, those actions, and see if there's another way to look at it. It's called reframing. See if there's another way to look at it. The guy honking at me from behind in the traffic, is he pissed off at me? No, he's in a hurry to get to work. That's called a reframe. Okay? Can you do that? Or have you already done that? Are you with me? Okay, everybody's already done the reframe? Okay, cool. Now let's take a look and decide, because we can always go back and pick up that ugly thinking, that negative thinking. What are the costs and what are the benefits to thinking that way? You can do that real quick, and it's going to be real obvious that the costs outweigh the benefits. We agree to that? We're not going to go through the list. Okay, if we can agree on that, then why do I keep paying that price? Do I want to keep paying that price? And if I don't, now it's time to make another choice, to find another way. A couple of key little hints that goes with this is that I need to avoid thinking in in these global terms about the situation. We're talking about one specific situation. It's not all men are this or all women are that. It's he treated me this way or she treated me that way. So avoid the global kind of stuff, right? So I've evaluated it. I've come up with an alternative way to look at it. I've reframed it. I've asked for help. If I cannot do it, I ask someone that I trust, how would you see this? If I don't have someone I can trust, then I go to God. God, show me how to see this. If I don't know how to do that, I flip a coin. I don't know. We've got to find another way to see it, because the way I'm seeing it ain't working. So I go to someone that I trust, or someone that's been through this, or someone that I think has value. Okay. And then the last thing to do to finish this off is I want to identify times when I've been successful. I don't want to look at all the times I've failed at this. I want to look at the times I've been successful at handling my situations, seeing them differently, bringing a better outcome into place, because that allows me to feel the strength that's truly there, not the weakness that I'm pretending to be. Okay. Now, this wraps it, and we're actually really done here. Go back to that person you thought of that was your inspiration. Back to the person or situation or song or book that inspired you. What did that inspire in you? I'll tell you what it inspired in you. Normally we'd talk about this, but what it inspired in you was a remembrance of the truth that's in you. That's what it inspired. So hang on to that truth. That's it.